Hey everybody, Willie here with Sharkfin Shears. Welcome back to another video edition haircutting tutorial. What an amazing adventure it's been to put all this together for you guys. So today we're going to knock out a cut from our collection called his name. We call the cut Oscar, and Oscar is a shark fin take on it's a modern take on a French crop. And as you are aware, we sell shears, so we're doing scissor over comb work or scissor and finger work in this particular instance. Everything about a French crop, if you're not familiar with it, it's kind of textured and messy and worn and lived in. If you haven't got the theme of this collection yet, that's it. It's kind of lived in, messy, textured, have fun. But also there's some beautiful, smooth, nice finishes to several of our haircuts as well. So Oscar's a fairly simple approach for what we're going to call a French crop or a longer crop. We're doing all of our work with scissor and fingers or scissor and comb. We're going to bust out a new shear today that you haven't seen yet. We're going to use a 15 tooth with this cool little technique on the top called alternating layers to give you movement inside of movement. It's going to be really rad. So lots of fun things on par for you today, or teed up, I guess, if we're thinking about golf. So pretty simple. Place the comb on the side of the head, right? Wherever the round is, that is where your horseshoe is going to go in. Things you can consider when taking this into things to take in when considering things to consider when doing this. Wow, bear with me; it'll get going, I promise. If you want more texture and movement throughout the parietal, you can drop this down a little lower and create some of that length to use as texture. If somebody has a ton of hair and you need to relieve more weight and more length, that all goes into account, and take that into consideration when doing the consultation. So this can be zigzagged and really messy if you want to bring out that messiness and add more piece texture to it. So all of those things are in your hands. We're just showing you the step-by-steps for the work around the sides and in the back, and especially the top. Now the top, it's going to be kind of tough to tell here, but I have 1, 2, 3, 4, technically 5 sections on the top. And it's just fairly parallel or horizontal sections, depending on where you're parallel from standing, or vertical from standing here, sorry, horizontal if I'm standing from behind. But just break those up. And what I've done is I've twisted the hair in opposite directions, because without getting too much in depth, because it could just get confusing, sections 2 and 4 are going to be the same length. Sections 1, 3, and 5 are going to be the same length. Don't get caught up on the numbers. You don't even have to take these sections out. In the real world, I would just have all this grouped together, and I would know in my mind what I'm doing as we move. Cool? So we're going to do a nice ergonomical technique with diagonal back sectioning. The reason I like diagonal back is it's more natural for my hands, more ergonomically correct for my posture. Something one thing to be aware of is, as we're working around the hair, the parting here around the parietal, make sure our finger angle is angled out a little bit. It's not too flat against the head, because we're removing all that length and we want all that through here. Where I would typically be standing for this cut is directly square to my section, but I want you guys to be able to see as much as you can. So you may see I'm a little under-directed towards the face, but you should be square, boom, 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 moving with the haircut. So I'll try to stay out of your way as much as possible. The length of this haircut is all determined in the consultation. So keep in mind, this very quickly can go from a French style crop to a very rounded out and almost like a Beatles haircut very quickly if we leave this length too long on the sides and in the back. You can take it shorter, you just have more, you have more of a uniform look. We want that length for texture and movement. Take that vertical section, take that diagonal back section. As you can see, I've already started this haircut, so I have a guide. For me, it's about a finger and a half. Or if you want to get real technical, it is, there's numbers on your combs, it is a little over an inch long, okay? A little bit longer at the top than it is at the base because we want that weight. So here we go. This haircut is a very much so a haircut that is the same technique over and over again, okay? So it's kind of boring. So honestly, I'm gonna get through this part of it as quickly as we can because the exciting part for me, while this is exciting, the exciting part for me is the top of the haircut because we're using a sectioning pattern and a technique that I learned from a very near and dear friend of mine who's an educator as well. So things to be mindful of as we're working through this haircut is as the head shape changes, I need to be mindful of that with my finger positioning. Okay, if I stay too flat, this is going to be short and it's going to be a different shape in the back. Okay, so just be mindful as the head shape changes, so should your finger positioning. The tendency for people when they get down here in the back is the finger angle generally comes out. It either goes around too tight or it comes out. And what happens is if we bring our finger angle out too far because our body positioning is off, we end up with this little ducktail back here, right? It's longer in the back. So just be mindful of that as you're cruising through this haircut. So take it out. Nice clean section. Everybody loves working with a mannequin, right? Especially when doing a male haircut. My guide is in there. I don't have a preference if you cut from bottom to top, top to bottom. It's whatever you're most comfortable with. Just remember, when you get up here and you're cutting the hair in here, make sure that finger angle stays out so we preserve that length. You can always clean that up after the haircut if need be. It's always better to have hair there and have to clean it up afterwards because it's a bit too long than not have it there when you need it, right? So we've all probably been in that situation before. I'm a pretty open, honest person, so I've made that mistake several times before in my career where it's like, oh, I really wish there was some hair here. Meaning I made a mistake, guys. This is what I'm really trying to say. So just be mindful of that. In this haircut, the things to be mindful of are your body position when you're cutting and your finger angle. So what I mean out here, even if you have to purposely pull out a little bit more to preserve that length, then do it, right? That's fine. Set yourself up for success. Set yourself up for success. As I work through here, and we see the shape, that hair wanted to come out with that section anyway, so I'm just going to oblige. So again, don't come, if anything, make sure you angle your fingers out and you have too much length. But what will happen is if you do that consistently, you're going to have all this additional length through the back. You could do a nice little variation of this, by the way, that could, be in that creative mullet category. It's completely up to you on what you want to achieve and how you want to achieve it. So as you see, just continue to take diagonal, backward sections, and then I can stop whenever I want. Meaning, now I'm just going to make sure I use that finger angle out a little bit, preserve some length through here. That's what I want. I'm going to follow with the hair. Perfect, see, just make that connection. Now, There's a couple of things going on here you can do. You can continue this all the way around. The only thing I would suggest is pay attention to your finger positioning, right? So work smarter, not harder. We want our elbows to be in at our sides. So for me, what I like personally is I like to just switch, come around to this other side, and start over fresh. Diagonal back section. So now you're going to see me put in this length from the other side. That's too much hair for me to work with. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to come in here. Diagonal back sectioning still, as opposed to coming in some funny way. So I'm going to come in, diagonal back. Here's where I love my swivel. Instead of coming in here, cranking in here like this, which is not good for my posture, right? This is not good for any of my posture. Also, it's not good if I'm teaching a class or something, I'm in your way. So with my swivel shear, body positioning, check, finger angle, check. I can go in there with a swivel shear. Wrist is straight, elbow is in. A nice posture here. Go in, clean that up, boom, done. Now what I would typically do is come in here and check. This side is obviously shorter than this side. The reason for that is I clean this up around the ear. So all this little detailing that we think about when we're doing short hair cutting, whether it's men's or women's, I don't care. But all of these things that we take into consideration when we're doing this, right? Make sure the hair stays nice and saturated. Coming back in. Diagonal back sections. Let's reposition Mr. Oscar. Diagonal back. Comb the rest of that hair out of the way. However you're used to working with it. I'm going to come in here. So just keep that body positioning as you're going. Nice and steady. Cutting square. Follow that down behind the ear. Same finger positioning. Same body positioning. The only thing we want to make sure we do is as we're rounding the head, see that little half a step or so I take? Make that adjustment. Make that adjustment. And it's going to keep you from removing or leaving too much length back here. Come back in, take another section, repeat, reposition, pick up the hair, find my guide. Remember, you can always angle out here a little bit extra if you want to preserve that length. It's completely up to you. That's just a common mistake a lot of people make. You know, we taught this haircut for 50 educators last year. And the most common mistake was as we were working around the head shape, our body wasn't moving with it. So we end up cutting everything from over here or everything from over here. We want it pulled out square 90 degrees from the head shape. So we have all that, what I did on the other side prior to. So I can just go in and detail that up. I'll show you guys that now. And as you see here, we're finishing this up already, which is what we want to do. This is, I don't want to bore you to death with this technique. I think it's great to show you, how, and then move through pretty quickly, unless I want to start telling you old stories, because it's the same thing over and over again. No one's here for my amazing storytelling skills. They're here to learn a haircut, right? So now I'm just going to drop that last little bit. And with this, for me, I'm just going to pull everything down. Clean all that up. That's all hair that was coming from the crown. So certain, things to take into consideration there is, do they have a swirl? Do they have a cowlick, etc., right? Do they have a weight line where it falls a little heavier? I can go in, I can point cut and clean up that weight line, whatever you want to do. Make sense? So then what I would do real quick, and with mannequins, you guys know the struggle. You can go in and clean this up if you want. Make it your own. We want a little length and texture there because that's how the rest of the haircut's going to look. For those of you who love clippers, you can take this shorter and it can just be a more barbered version of the same thing. But for us, we're going to show you with scissor and comb technique. So now we're going to go to the top inside of the horseshoe. So the first section we're going to cut is the hair in the crown. And what's most important here is understanding any hair growth patterns we have, any cowlicks or anything like that. So we want to make sure that we leave enough hair there to make up for that. So all we're going to do here in this case is connect that to the back. And the way we're going to do it is pull it straight out and cut. And then we're just going to make that connection. Again, we're not telling you whether you should over direct or under direct or whatever. You're going to make that based off of what you're trying to achieve inside of this haircut. A lot of this haircut afterwards, you're going to go in detail to add texture and weight, but we can do that with the texturizing shear as well. We can make this a little more masculine or a little more feminine, a little more square or a little more round, depending on what your guest wants to achieve. So now that we have that accomplished, we just have it connected in the back. I'm going to drop this next section, which is technically section number 2. And what we're going to do with alternating layers is we're going to go short, long, in a sense of the sections 2 and 4 are going to be the same length, and sections 1 and 3 are going to be the same length, but they're going to be shorter than 2 and 4. Short hair pushes long hair, it creates texture and movement. But then also inside of that, we're going to go inside with a texturizing shear. So we're determining that length for ourselves. That's where that guide comes from. It's based on how much texture, how much movement we want to have. When I go in, I'm going to go in and I'm going to cut square. 90 degrees from where the hair lies, cut square. I can tell you already that that's too long. So I'm going to go in there, I'm going to cut it again. Go in with my swivel. Another thing I love about my swivel shear is anytime I'm working on the top of the head, instead of being cranked up here with a non-swivel, everything's nice and comfortable and down by my side. Go through, check, square it off. If you want to add even more texture and movement, point cut it. That's fine too. Razor cut it, whatever it is that you want to do, okay? So now, my next section that I take out, it should be 50% of the length of the section that I just cut. So section 1 is approximately 4 inches, section 2 approximately 2 inches. So that short inside a long, inside a short, inside a long is going to create more movement and texture throughout the haircut, which is what we want to do in this version of a French crop. So go inside, cutting everything square. Cutting everything square. Yes, you're going to have some additional length off of the sides. You can take that corner off now, but I want that length there, and I'm going to show you what to do with it after we detail out this haircut. I don't want to take it all off yet. I want to show you a cool little technique with the texturizing shear. And then that's how we're going to remove that excess length that's left throughout the parietal. So I'm going to go back in here. Just going to clean this up nice and neat. I'm still working inside that same section. I just had a ton of hair inside of that section. This mannequin is quite lovely in a sense of it has plenty of hair. So for me, it's all about working the length I'm comfortable with, the amount of hair that I'm comfortable with. There's where you see that additional hair I'm talking about. If you just want to get it out of the way, which I do, just clean it up a little bit. Do not go too short, because I want that length. And you'll see why when we style out the rest of this haircut, okay? Now, my last section here, before my, probably the most important part of this haircut. So my last section that I do, thank you for holding on to my comb, sir. The last section I do before, the bang or the fringe in this, because it really does have one, goes back to the same length as the first section that I did. So, just going to get rid of all this hair first. Okay, pull it all up square. Inside of this, I want to relieve a little more weight, create a little more texture and movement. So what I'm doing, pulling it all up, and I'm going to point cut this right along my finger. Hopefully I don't cut myself today, and if I do, it won't be the first time. So you have all that extra hair, just get it out of the way when you're practicing on a mannequin. I work in a salon. I've worked in a salon for years. Most times you don't have someone with super long hair come in and ask for a haircut like this, so you don't have to worry about all this excess length as much. But every now and then someone will come in and want a big change like that. So what we've done in here now is we've created all of this texture and movement on the interior of this haircut on the top. If we kind of bring it all forward, we can already start seeing all that texture and movement in there. So the last thing we want to do here is the front. Or if you're not familiar with this cut, I would urge you to just Google French crop, because you'll see there's, it has that Caesar finish around the front. Caesar in a sense of it's just a kind of a blunt fringe, a blunt bang. So you can have as much fun with this as you want. You can leave it here and kind of just bring all this length over, and you have all this. No, don't. You can do whatever you want. So for me, what I do on this last part is I bring everything forward and I see how strong the hairline is, okay? And I see how strong the hairline is because it tells me how strong of a fringe or a bang that I can give on this guest. It can be really short and really heavy and really cool with longer interior texture and be really creative, or it can follow the length and the flow of the rest of the haircut. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in here with very little elevation, the fine teeth of my comb, and I'm doing this for one purpose and one purpose only, just to get rid of all this hair That's the only reason I'm doing this. You can do this however you want. You can use the wide teeth of your comb against the head and clean it up. You can do whatever, right? So we already see in this how drastic just that changed the look. This is something, guys, believe it or not, that you could leave. You could leave it a little longer and a little heavier. And when you style it out, this could be a little smoother, but still have texture in it, right? But it goes with the look of the rest of the haircut. Also here, you see why we wanted that length throughout the parietal. Okay? Because we can pull all that forward and it creates all this texture and movement within the haircut. So there are multiple options of finishing this. You can go in, you can detail this shorter, scissor over comb, right? And just clean it up a little bit so you don't have all that texture and weight. You can do that as well. And just take all that down a little. Come over here, right? Come over here, do the same thing. Just clean all this up. Because for me in this cut, just pick it up and do a little bit of slide cutting, right? Quite literally, if I see some weight in here, I just pick it up and do a little bit of slide cutting and take all that out. This is a very creative, very textured, very lived in style haircut, like all the other cuts in our collection, right? So I can come over here and I can do the same thing. Can just piece all this out, texture all this out. Also, one little other thing I want to show you before I wrap this up. The 15 tooth texture shear, right? What I love to do on the top inside of those sections is where I went, short, long, did it backwards, short, long, and then my fringe or my bang, right, for this. Inside of that, I can go in with a texture shear now, and even if it's what was considered the long section, I can go in and I can create short inside of those longer sections, which were sections 1 and 3, I believe, if I remember correctly. I can go in and create short inside of that long. And all that's going to do is create more texture and movement throughout this haircut. This is a really fun haircut to add to the arsenal. It's lots of variations and lots of options. I can do that same slide cutting. That same slide cutting I can do with a 15 tooth texturize or a 28 or whatever. You could use a 7, which is a really heavy chunking shear. Whatever you're most comfortable with. You can do all this point cutting and slide cutting as well, by the way. So it's completely up to you. And I just go in and I clean all that up just to add more texture and more movement. I can go into this front portion and I can add texture and movement. I can remove weight. When you're using a texture shear, the shear is your comb. I used to, with a texture shear, I would cut, open, and then comb it out. With a texture shear, you should be able to place it in the hair, cut, close it, and pull it through. And it shouldn't catch, it shouldn't feel awkward, any of that stuff, right? And I can go in and I can remove more weight, thus create more texture and movement wherever I want. So the last thing I want to show on this that's driving me a bit bonkers today, and it could be my ADD, is, if you guys didn't notice, which I'm sure you did, that's not even busted, right? That's okay, we're not done yet. Can go in now, the wide teeth of my comb, and I'm going to make that adjustment. This particular mannequin has a lot of texture to the hair. So This is a great example of hair texture you could do this haircut on. This is where if Allison were here right now, or Randy, or some of the other people I've worked with in the past, they would talk about how I'm really particular about some things. And I think that overall, that's okay. I don't want these to be perfect, but you see the difference, hopefully. Sometimes also, as I'm stepping out of frame, take a step back and look at it, because sometimes when I'm standing right on top of it, it can seem like it's great. And I need to go back and detail out. So these little corner pieces. Again, I don't want it to be perfect, but I want it to make sense. So I wish I had a mirror right now. And I don't. So just detail it out as it makes sense for you. That's fine. I'm going to step in front of the camera. I just want to make sure, okay, cool. This, at the end of the day, this has my name on it. So, and that's okay. Couple things here real quick. You could clean all this up a little shorter, scissor over comb, that's fine. You can make those alterations. You can square this off a little more by changing up the technique. All of that's fine. What I want to get across in this haircut, which hopefully I have as we're wrapping up, is the technique and how to achieve it. And the technique of, square layering on the sides, using a diagonal back sectioning, and alternating layers to create movement and texture throughout the front, and how creative you can be with other shears inside of a haircut, or creating movement inside of movement with the alternating layers. So I want to thank you guys for joining me here today for the Oscar. Hopefully you can step up some of your technique, or you learn something that you can put in the tool belt that helps out. And remember, here at Shark Fin, it's nice to be nice.